Welcome to Fatherhood for the Rest of Us with Brandon Handley. Because you're already great at everything else, why not fatherhood?
Hey there,
too?
Fatherhood for the Rest of Us. This is Brandon Handley, the creator, the founder of Fatherhood for the Rest of Us, the voice of a generation. Always pleased to be able to bring these conversations to you. This one is a rare one where I have a female as my interviewee. She is AlissaDaireNelson. She is a coach on Strength Finders for businesses as well as a few other areas. But if you're not familiar with Strength Finders, it is run by Gallup, and you can go take this. You can take a test, and you can find out what your strengths are, and you can begin to see the things that excite you and really drive you. And Alissa, what she does is to help you apply those in your life and show you where and how you can make your business be more successful and be more successful yourself outside of business too. These don't just apply to business. These apply to yourself at home. And you can also, this will also work with your spouse, your significant other. There are strength finders for children. And so as somebody who specializes in this area, I was just thrilled to have her on. She's also been recently noted as an icon of influence along with on a panel with John Lee Dumas. And we talk quite a bit about Strength Finders, and she also goes through the exercise. She points mine out, so you can see that she knows what she's talking about. That was not pre-planned. We also talk about how to apply them and what happens if your strengths are suppressed. We talk about that as well. Listen, we get through quite a bit of that, and I thought that, look, this fathers, you got to hear this stuff. You need to hear it. And we also talked about her experience, the impact that her father had on her life. And, one of the things that I really just loved about that conversation as well was, just the words, the intent that her father applied to being a father, as well as there was another spot in here that he was, committed to being and providing for the family, but then the other part was really key into how he speaks to Alissa, the story she shares about walking with purpose. I think that's really an awesome takeaway from this one. There's going to be a lot of other takeaways from this one. I want to say thanks to Alissa also for providing a bonus gift. Listen in to the end of this podcast, and you'll be able to hear that giveaway from Alissa. She's the author of a book, not to give any clues, that is from frustrated to freaking awesome. So you're going to make sure that you want to listen into the whole thing, and also just reach out to Alissa and say thanks for being on here. Say thanks for sharing her story, because I think it's an awesome one, and I'm grateful that I was able to have this conversation with her, and I'm glad that she stopped on and chatted with us. Other than that, guys, as always, please stop on over to iTunes, subscribe so you don't miss any of these interviews that I think are just, I think they're great. It's not simply because I'm having these interviews and sharing them. I personally get a lot from these, and I hope that I know that they can be beneficial to you as well. Just give them the opportunity and listen in on these, and share that experience of what you're finding here on Fatherhood for the Rest of Us with the world. Just take a couple moments there, and that will help others to share in the experience that you're having. Also, if you'd like to reach out to me, I'd love to hear from you. I'm over on Facebook at Brandon G. Handley. Always looking forward to chatting up with people who are listening to the podcast. And there's also a group that I'm running, Fatherhood for the Rest of Us. Hop on over to Facebook. There's a great group of men over there, fathers who are sharing their stories, who are inspiring each other to be the fathers that they want to be, and really just basically putting one foot in front of the other to be the fathers that they want to be. It's a tough job, and we all need to every once in a while get some help from somebody else. Or look, sometimes it's what I found is awesome is, sometimes when you celebrate and nobody wants to celebrate with you, that sucks. In Fatherhood for the Rest of Us, the group, if you want to come in there and celebrate, we want to celebrate with you, man. We want to look, if you're experiencing some joy and you don't know where to go to share that, man, stop on over to Fatherhood for the Rest of Us. We want to be part of that joy. All other things here. So the last part of this is if you're struggling to make that next step, if you're struggling in any way to be the father that you want to be, if there's something that you need some help with, reach out to me. Maybe there's something I can help you with. I've got a certain set of tools and skills that have been developed over the past couple of years that when applied to fatherhood can really just make life a lot more, how do I, just more vivid, more tangible, being present. Anyways, guys, if that's something that you're looking for, you need some accountability, and you want to make you want to take the strides forward, reach out to me at reconstruct.brandonhanley.com, or just send me an email, brandon@fatherhoodfortherestofus.com, and say, hey, I want to talk. That's it, guys. Listen in on this one. You're going to love it. More than anything else, she's an exceedingly proud wife and mother of two who loves helping others discover how to make their businesses and relationships thrive in harmony. Thanks for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I have been looking forward to chatting with you for a long time. And a long time for me is like 3 weeks. That's a long time.
It really it's it feels like it's been a long time. It does. What I want to start off with us today, though, is what can we celebrate for you today? What kind of awesome things are happening in your life?
Oh my goodness, what kind of awesome things? Well, I'm successfully pulling off a birthday party for one of my daughters this Friday. I dropped the ball on my other daughter's birthday party when it was her birthday. And so I feel kind of proud that we've actually gonna get this thing going. I haven't picked up her cake yet, but in process. So
Sure.
That's a huge success. I also just got back from the New Media Summit in San Diego, where I got to be a panelist among 40 other or 39 other amazing podcasters, and to be featured as an icon of influence. And I thought,
that
it's the first time I've ever been considered an icon. So that's a huge win. So that was really awesome.
You might be the first icon on the show. Thanks.
There we go.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about, your strengths finders.
Yeah.
And just kind of why it's so important to you, why you love doing it, and so much so that, you founded a business and a podcast on it.
Right. So I spent a good portion of my adolescence and then early adulthood wondering at every turn, if something didn't go right, that what was wrong with me. Not just that I made a mistake, not just that, the situation didn't turn out or a relationship didn't turn out. I always internalized it and wondered what was wrong with me. And so I continually thought of myself as being flawed. And part of that had something to do with my faith, religious upbringing, which is, we're born into sin. Like we're all like, right?
We're all going down.
That's right. And, but the grace of God that you're actually an okay human, right? And so then when I found the StrengthsFinder profile and I took it, and it gave me this list of all the things that were right with me. It started there.
When was that, and how long ago was that?
That was back in 2014.
Okay.
So we're really not that long ago, but this was after several years, 5 to 6 years of trying to figure things out post-divorce, like going to counseling to try to figure out what's wrong with me, right? Like why did I have a failed marriage? How did I screw this up? How am I screwing my kids up currently? and kind of went down the self-development route. And so in that search is when I found StrengthsFinder. And it was like this lightning bolt moment.
Sure.
Where it was like, wow, there's like legitimately in black and white, in proof, there's something, all these things that are right with me.
Right.
And so I dove in, took a 30-week long certification course.
Wow.
Like I wanted to know everything about this. And what's awesome is I'm still learning, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So that's really cool, to really understand all of this. And so what came out of that is the true belief that, this wish that I'd had that I was actually unique was not just a wish, it was really true and I could own it. And so that's why I'm so passionate about it, because it really is, like, you are truly one of a kind, truly, not just like in theory or in some fantasy world.
Right.
And that one of a kind means that your presence on this earth matters, and that showing up out loud in this world matters because you have something to contribute.
Right on. And I mean, showing up out loud and taking that chance. I mean, putting yourself out there on the podcast. I mean, that really just says, hey, I believe enough in this that I'm telling the world.
Yeah.
Right. That's great. That's great. So one of the I always break down. I'm like, I love the fact that we can share like information in sheets between each other to have like, pertinent questions to ask and not just willy-nilly ones.
Yeah.
But so let's talk a little bit about if we're setting yourself apart in a crowded market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, well, first of all, I mean, the strengths is one really good way. So all of our strengths bring certain contributions that are our easy buttons. And very often we don't see them as anything that sets us apart because they're easy for us. Like it just comes easy. Right.
Sure.
So first of all, it's helping people really see those distinctions. Like my futuristic, I have futuristic and I have positivity and I have activator. And so it's like this, I can paint this really beautiful future for my clients, like help them actually see through the fog. It's a gift, right? So not everybody can do that. And then I can back it up with my strategic and go, okay, now let's figure out a plan that is unique to you that will get you there, right? Those are things that set me apart in my business. It also gives me an understanding of who I should take on. So my activator, I like movement. I like to get into movement. So if I have a client or potential client that comes to me and says, yeah, so I'm really thinking about this and I'm reading a lot of books and I'm sorting and I kind of wonder if, and they're just kind of in idea phase, right? Or they're just in consumption phase.
Right.
I can tell them, hey, you know what? I'm super happy for you when you figure it out. Let's go.
Right.
But I tell them, and I actually reward it. I actually have a bonus for clients who take action because I need that. And so it helps me also to know who are the best clients for me to take on. So that's one thing. And then, honoring your past experiences. What did you go through as a kid? I grew up with a family of 7 children in a very, very, very conservative home. And what did that mean for me? What did that life experience give me, both positive and negative, that make me who I am and give me something unique to offer, right? So you look at those things, you look at also your formal education, and you look at, your informal education, and you look at what are your values, what matters to you, what presses you, what is your why, and all of those things blended together really give you that thing that sets you apart. And so that's one of the first things I do with my clients is we figure all of that out, get it down in black and white. What is the thing that sets you apart?
Right. What's that process look like? Like how long does something like that take?
It's my jumpstart call with my one-on-one clients, and that takes 2 hours, where we sit down and I already have their strength themes, of course, by then. And so we work some of that stuff out, and I give them lots of resources and like their ultimate strengths resource guide, so that they don't have to learn all 34 of their strength themes all at once. My 90-day intensive clients get all 34. Otherwise, I honestly don't recommend that people get all 34 all at once because it's a little bit overwhelming. So if you could just do your top 5, we just focus in on that.
Yeah.
And then we go through a values exercise. And a lot of this stuff is actually in the book. What's interesting is I didn't hold anything back in my book. I just put it all out there, and really it's a DIY. And the hard part about the implementation of these things is having the courage and the accountability to get it done. So I have people who read my book and then come to me and go, okay, I want you to help me work through this.
Right.
So yeah. So in large part, chapter 4 of my book is a big portion of that process. And obviously in there, I'm giving expertise as to interpretations and stuff as well.
Right on. I thought it would be kind of fun. Let's do two. You said you got a parlor trick, right? You got a parlor trick. So I thought it'd be kind of fun. I don't think I sent you a report, but it was the wrong one. It wasn't the Strength Finders. It was the Standout report, which is also by Gallup and also awesome. But I think you're pretty familiar with that. So I thought it'd be fun to say, hey, can you pick out mine?
See, now I'm like frantically looking for it. No, I'm not going to. I'm gonna go ahead and just try to guess. So, I think what I hear as I listen to your podcast and as I listen to you, I think that you have probably at least a few relationship building themes, maybe empathy, where you really can feel what other people are feeling. Possibly, oh gosh, and like, let me just say out loud that usually I get just a couple right. And here's the reason why, is that when we have our strengths that come together and blend, because our strengths don't show up just on their own, that when they blend, they make a strengths baby.
Strengths baby.
And I don't need to go into, how babies are made, but you guys know how babies are made. So when things come together, all of a sudden they produce babies. And those babies are similar to those strengths, but they often look different. So sometimes what looks like activator is maybe just achiever. Right? Okay. Achiever and positivity, possibly. Right. So it kind of depends on what things come together to make those strengths babies. But I think you have positivity. That would not surprise me in any way, shape, or form. Adaptability would make a lot of sense to me. Just being able, that's your number one. There we go. Rolling with the punches and being able to record a Facebook Live video with two kids tackling each other in the back seat and like, all right, so this is just how we're going to roll. We're just going to do this thing. And what an asset that is to parenting, really, is to have that adaptability. So.
Right. So I think that one of the reasons why I felt like outside that you're an icon about having you on here today was that primarily I have fathers, but this strength thing is pretty big, and a lot of us go through our own challenges. And just like you said, we're looking for all the things that are broken all the time. We're like, hey, what's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? How do I fix what's broken? And here here's all the things that are great with me, and how can I harness these, right? And that's
right.
So that's, I think, one of the big reasons to have you on here, someone who's so knowledgeable about all this, that I want that to shine through.
Yeah,
and that's the reason.
Well, and we do this to our kids too, right? Where our jobs as parents is to make sure that our kids, I have a little different philosophy about kids. My job isn't to raise great kids; it's to raise amazing adults,
right?
Right. But bottom line, adults can't. There's certain social things that you have to do and not do. Like you have to go to school, and you can't scream at the teacher when they're at school and all these things. So we find that we're correcting our children a lot. And that discipline absolutely needs to happen. So please, if you're listening, don't think I don't discipline my children. But what I am saying is when we start to search for what's good in our children, even if it's different from how we're wired. I actually had my girls on my podcast, episode 49 of Maximize Your Strengths, if you want to go check it out. But to talk about their strength themes, because there's a strengths finder for children. It's called Strengths Explorer, and they are totally different from me. I have one of my daughters that has a couple of themes that are similar to mine, but my other one's not at all like me. And don't we all have a kid like that? Just like, I don't get this kid. I don't understand. Like I don't see through the same lens as my child. And when we can recognize that our lens is unique to us, right? Now we can honor it for ourselves and be like, hey, I'm pretty great. Like, cause this is the lens by which I see the world. So that's awesome. And now we don't expect others to see the world through that same lens because we know it's unique to us.
Right.
So now we can actually have a conversation with our kid and say, hey, what do you see? What's your experience?
Right.
You're 7 years old and you're at hip height. Like, how does that look when you have to look up at everybody? Oh, I can see why you might get anxiety in a room full of adults, or whatever the case may be, right? We can have a different conversation with our kids
Right.
when that's the case.
Right.
And that's why it's so powerful as we look at our parenting, because none of us are doing it right.
The other thing that you
Mhm.
you bring up too is that couples, right? Just
Mhm.
in general, I've taken the test. I don't think I've even asked her to. I think it didn't dawn on me until I listened to one of your podcasts to have her say, listen, or go through and do the test so that we could see kind of where our disparities are and like have words to them, right? And it's not that we don't know that we're different, because we are. It's like where are those differences and how can we address them?
Right. And now you can say, oh, this is how you're wired. You're not just trying to be difficult. Right. My husband has a theme called deliberative, which is quite clearly deliberate, right? So nothing comes out of his mouth until he is certain that it's the right thing.
Right.
Right. So he doesn't spout off, which is great. But he also doesn't share things as readily as I would like to. Like,
Right.
women love to communicate. Baby, tell me how you're feeling. Share your feelings. And he just doesn't do that.
Right.
He also isn't one to like be super spontaneous because of that. Right. Now I have activator, as I mentioned before. Activator just likes to move.
Right.
And sometimes things fly out of my mouth that probably shouldn't fly out of my mouth. Right.
That's my number 2. So
right. So you get it. Right.
Do I get it?
Yeah, but now understanding that that's just how he's wired. Now I can honor the space that he needs. Like,
Right.
hey, we're talking about this thing. How much time do you need to kind of process through this? When can we come back and talk about it? And now we have a deadline. So it's, Thursday after dinner.
Sure.
Fabulous. I can put my activator on hold because I know this will have a resolution, and then I don't have to be a nag. Right. So just understanding that and understanding what he needs and him understanding what I need.
Right.
He knows that sometimes I need spontaneity. Like, let's just go out for dinner tonight.
Sure.
Well, we had this planned. Well, yep, but we're just going to go out to dinner. And he can honor that for me too.
Right. Now that's huge. Being able to, again, like see what the other person needs, and it's written down. So, I mean, I could see myself yelling out. I'd be like, hey, what's your number 4 again? Because I think I need to know what that was right now.
Totally.
Right.
Totally.
So, my top 5 were adaptability, activator, ideation, connectedness, and command. I was like, this is fun, man. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to kind of put it down on paper and then you see it. Now, so if I go through this, tell me then, so if I go through this, I read through it, what do I do next? I've got all this information and it's great to read and I feel good about myself. What do I do next?
Right. Because this is the crux. And this is actually the number one reason I started the podcast, because the application now is like, oh, now what? So great. You tell me I'm awesome, but now what? So what's important to know about each one of these things is that they, again, have contributions. They all have needs. So adaptability needs the space to be able to move back and forth. Command needs the space to be able to direct things. Right? Ideation needs the space to just brainstorm. Like, what if you were told in a job that you were told this is what you're going to do every minute of the day, and then you were like, oh, I have this idea, and they're like, no, because this is our process. Like, it would drive you crazy.
Oh, it drives me crazy.
Yeah, it's like someone putting their hand over your mouth and your nose,
right.
Because you need that space. And so what happens is you kick and scream, and it comes out sideways, and that's the ugly behavior that afterwards you're like, oh, probably shouldn't have done that, right?
It doesn't go well with activator.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So that's the next thing you do with it is start to notice where you're really fulfilled and where you're really frustrated, because those frustrations are your needs not being honored. Right. Or your contributions not being honored. And the fulfillment is when like, oh, that's just that we're buzzing on all cylinders. Like if you have the space to be like, hey, here's some resources, brainstorm some ideas, and then go get into action. You're like, oh, okay. And like, you can feel your excitement, right?
I'm excited now, and it's not even real.
Because it's feeding those things. So
Right,
just starting to
yeah.
recognize those things. And now again, you can start to have a conversation. Now, what are you bringing to the table? Like, you weren't excited about that. So, help me understand what your lens is. And what it does is it just expands the conversation. It
Right.
really is a conversation starter,
Right.
more than anything. And you don't even have to know anybody else's strengths to know that. If nobody ever takes a strengths finder profile, look at how sacrilegious that is for me to say. But what they do is they go, I'm going to be curious instead of judgmental.
Right.
I'm going to be curious instead of angry.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Expand on that a little bit.
Yeah. Then there's honor, there's respect, there's a whole thing. The dynamics of everything changes.
Right.
Changes in parenting, it changes in marriage, it changes in, this beautiful political spectrum that we've got going on. Imagine if in the political realm, people were actually curious and wanted to understand others.
Right. Yeah. So
we'd have a whole different country.
Yeah. We don't find ourselves sitting there saying your way is wrong because you didn't say it quite right. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Very cool. Well, I mean, let's talk a little bit about your family life. 7? 1 of 7? Man, you got to eat? That's great.
So we did, and we sometimes got seconds. So it was all portioned, and there was usually only like 3 or 4 seconds. So you had to eat really fast in order to get seconds. So that is one skill. I'll call it a skill for now, even though it's caused me maybe some issues with food and such. But I eat really fast. And if there was something we didn't like, that just didn't matter. We sat at the table till it was done, because and this is what we heard literally. There are children who are starving in Ethiopia. You need to be grateful for your food and just eat it.
Have you never said that to your children?
I honestly, I haven't. I've said it in chide, like, don't you know there's people starving? And, we do make them at least try a food.
Right.
Before they refuse it. And actually what we do now is we have them plate up their own food.
Huh.
So when they choose the portions, that's fine, but you need to eat what you're given.
Clever tip, y'all. Clever tip.
Very quickly, they discover my eyes may be bigger than my stomach. I can go back for seconds, but I can't put the first portion back.
Nice. I love that. Man, fighting at the dinner table. That's I've let go of it. That's probably one of my first fatherhood tips is like, we just don't argue over food anymore. It's like, if they eat a little bit of it, that's great. They're still 5 and 7, but it's not worth going to the grave for.
No, pick your battles.
Right. So when they're done eating, I'm like, get up and go, leave.
Yeah. What we fought for actually mostly when we were kids was attention.
7 of you. So let's. I mean, so what's the family background look like here? What tell me a little bit about that.
My dad grew up Catholic, if that's a shock to anybody listening, and then chose an actually even more conservative denomination when we were growing up. But
it's more conservative than Catholic. I'm not real. I don't know. I don't even know.
It was different. It's called charismatic, and so they really focused on the Bible, and specifically the book of Acts. So like the acts of the Spirit, or the gifts of the Spirit. So speaking in tongues, and some other really, they always struck me as a little bit odd. And I apologize if you're charismatic listening. I'm not judging you.
I would think it sounds different for me. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it was just, but we went to church every Sunday. We spent all day there, and then Wednesday church, and we weren't allowed to believe in Santa Claus because that was demonic and not okay, because the reason for the season was Jesus, and we weren't allowed to trick or treat because that was satanic, and like a lot of beliefs now that I'm like, it was just kind of fun fantasy. Like, it's okay to let kids have an imagination,
right?
And so that's kind of what I got out of it was, I think there might be a different way to look at this.
Sure.
So, and I also was how some kids like follow rules because that's the rule, and so the rule's just there. If there was a rule, I was like, well, why? Like, my first indication was to ask why, which was really hard for my parents. With 7 kids, they just really needed us to follow the rules. Like, for the love of God, just
Right.
follow
Well, I
the
mean,
rules.
you've only got two, right? You've got
Mm-hmm.
two. I've only
Mm-hmm.
got two, and the two of them combined, when they start teaming them up on you, you just please for 5 minutes,
Yes.
don't jump off of everything at the same time.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so I have spent my 30s apologizing to my parents. And actually, once I moved away from home after college or at college, I started to appreciate them for the first time.
Right.
I was very disrespectful, actually, to my parents, and that I don't feel good about. But what it's done is it's transformed my parenting so that the baseline rule is respect.
Sure.
So you can disagree with me, but you need to do it in a respectful manner. And if you
Sure.
can't approach me in a respectful manner, this isn't a conversation. So I started to apologize even then. And my mom said, yeah, I've always loved you. Man, there was a long time where I didn't like you. I'm like, yeah, I know. I know.
That's great.
So,
So let's talk. What was your? It is primarily fatherhood for the rest of us based on
mhm.
that. So I just want to just talk a little bit about. You talk a little bit about how went from Catholic to charismatic, but what was what was your dad like, and kind of what was the impact he had on you?
Yeah, I love my dad so much. So my dad was the hugger. My dad is the one who would cry with us. He was the one who would say, "I love you." And my mom was very. She made sure that we had 3 squares a day, and that we were where we needed to go, and that we had clothes on our back. But she wasn't the huggy feely type.
Hmm.
And as you can probably tell, I am the huggy feely type, and I love words a lot. And so I needed to hear "I love you." And
Right.
so, I'm so grateful for my dad because words were important to him. And so my mom would call me stubborn, and he would say, "Oh, sweetie, I think you're strong-willed." And there's a difference,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he was very cautious and thoughtful about the words he chose in parenting me. And as much as I had this self-talk that was like, "What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me?" I had my dad in my head too, to say, "Hey, no, 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 you're strong-willed.
That's
And
great.
that's a good thing." And, look at how, and he taught me things like, he taught me how to walk. I know it sounds super silly, but my dad taught me how to walk with purpose, and, to keep my eyes up. Don't look at the ground when you're walking down the sidewalk. Look up. It's okay to look in people's eyes and say hello, you know and so even if I'm not feeling confident, I can portray that because I walk with purpose wherever I go, and I always have my eyes up, looking at people, smiling and saying hello. And the neat part is that you have these amazing connections with total strangers when you just like lock eyes just for a moment, just to smile and say, "Hey, I see you."
Right.
And my dad taught me that.
That's great.
There's many a job interview that I walked into and was offered the position, in large part because I walked in like I rocked the confidence, right? Like I totally belonged there. And the reason I was able to do that was because of my dad.
That's
And
great.
so I cherish my dad for all of those things that he taught me. And it really was the hugs and the "I love yous" that made me really understand that I was loved, even if I was a pain in the butt.
I would like to think we all were, but that's just me, because I think I was a bit of a pain myself. The what you seven of you there? What was he working in? What was your family? What did your family do for work?
Yeah. Well, so interestingly, my mom graduated from Radcliffe, which was back in the 60s. Radcliffe and Harvard were sister brother schools.
Okay.
Radcliffe was the women's school and Harvard was the boys' school. My mom graduated from Radcliffe, right? So legitimately a Harvard education, and went to graduate school and then stayed at home with 7 children. Okay. If any of you know love languages, clearly my mother's love language is acts of service. Like,
Wow.
she gave up all of that to stay home with us. Now, I didn't understand that then, when I was young, and I resented her a little bit for it, because with 9 mouths to feed and one parent staying at home, we didn't have a lot of money.
Right.
And so and so that was tough. But my dad worked for, I still live in Minnesota in the Twin City metro area. And my dad worked for Public Works in Minneapolis. So he actually was a city planner. And while that sounds super awesome, like, oh, so he decided where roads were going to go, more like he decided where speed bumps were going to go, but still awesome, still super awesome. And he worked at that job for 30 years.
Wow.
And he took the bus to work every day and took the bus home every day. And, he did that for us, that stability we needed. And when at no point were we ever on welfare or anything like that. That was definitely a point of pride for my dad, because back up one more generation, and his dad left his mom with 3 small children.
Okay.
And that was in the days of polio. She was actually confined to a wheelchair, so she couldn't work.
Jeez.
And so this single mom in a wheelchair with 3 small children, and they were on welfare. And so they sold pot holders door to door because she could sew. And so it was a mortifying experience for him. And so he made the commitment that he would never, ever, ever use public assistance. And, I think that's a large part of why he chose to stay in the job he did, even though I don't think he was super happy in that job, but he was committed to providing for his family.
Right. Now that's a great story. I love it. And you, you're divorced and you're second, right now.
Second and last, I would say.
Second and last. And let's just talk a little bit about kind of how that was for you. Because if I understand correctly, not only so you go through the divorce, you got the 2 children, and then you jumped right into school.
Yeah. So I separated from my first husband in my last semester of nursing school. And so entered into a brand new nursing career, with, sleeping in my best friend's spare bedroom on a full-size bed with 2 kids.
Wow.
That's how I finished up my last semester of nursing school, and then into my first job. And that was obviously a challenge. I was working straight nights, which is exhausting anyway. A 0.9 straight nights. If any of you are nurses out there or work the night shift, you know how unbearable a 0.9 is working straight nights.
What does that mean? What's a 0.9?
So it means out of every pay period, you're working 9 days. So full time for any, regular human is 10 days in a pay period, right? Monday through Friday. But even at a 0.9, that's enough to kill you. As a nurse, because it's very labor intensive anyway, as a bedside nurse. And so most nurses really don't work a whole lot more than 0.8. But then we're also picking up extra shifts all the time. So it wasn't uncommon for me to start at 11 o'clock at night and then not finish till 4 p.m. the next day. So anyway, so that was kind of work-wise what I was doing, and going through the divorce and trying to figure out what this dating thing looks like. Because my ex and I got together when we were 18 years old. So yeah, I mean, I didn't date in college or anything because, we had our thing. And so I had to figure out this dating thing, and stumbled upon my now husband, long before I was really ready for him. And that's a story for another day, but we had to really put that on pause because I was like, wow, this guy is too good to lose and I'm not ready for a relationship.
How long after separation?
So I went out, saw him about 3 months after my ex and I separated, and we weren't divorced for another 9 months. 8 months after that, even. And so I was like, wow, this is a really nice guy. And he, I called a friend. I was like, I just want someone to tell me I'm pretty and buy me a drink. And so this guy did, and he was so kind. And then I realized he was so much more than so kind.
Right.
So we had to put that on hold. But anyway, so now, we dated for then a year and a half. Fast forward, I got divorced. And let me tell you, if I will give one piece of advice for anyone going through a divorce and then dating again, please finish the divorce before you begin dating. Seriously. And the reason is that you might know, cerebrally that you're getting divorced, but until you sign on that bottom line, you're not divorced. And thankfully we had to set that on the side, because even still I was like, well, maybe I should go back. Maybe we could figure it out. And now our relationship isn't tainted with that.
Sure.
And I don't have to ask the question, did I sign on the bottom line because I had this great thing over here, or did I sign on the bottom line because it was the right thing for me, for the children, for our relationship?
No, that's a good message. Yeah.
So that's my tip on that. But we got back together after we were divorced, dated for a year and a half, and now my children suddenly have this amazing bonus dad
I love it.
that other kids don't have.
I want to just a quick question, kind of how that relates. What were you able to see? Was he still your ex? Was he still in the picture in their lives? And kind of what was that impact on the kids?
Yeah, he has always been dedicated to staying in the picture, which
Okay.
I have really loved and appreciated about him. He always wanted to be a halftime dad. And just because I'm a mom and because, I work from home, it is very often not quite half and half. I have him more than that. But he always wants to be present. He calls every night still
Okay.
before they go to bed to say goodnight. And, he cares, he legitimately cares and wants to be a present father. And so I've totally loved and appreciated. Now it's also is a challenge for a bonus dad, because bonus dad can't step in and be 100% dad, right? And he's bridged that gap. Joel is my husband's name, just beautifully. And somehow he's figured that out, and I'm just in awe of it, because he knows how to be bonus dad, which is, really dad in this under this roof, and he holds the rules and has the discipline and all the love, but also is willing to let their dad be dad. And I think that's a challenge, and I just so honor that he can do it so beautifully.
That's great. I can't imagine. I can't imagine going through divorce with kids and then trying to be either one of the other dads. Really, seeing my kids with another dad, and then trying to parent another dad's kid. It's got to be tough. So kudos. I'm happy that it's working out for you on your end. I mean, that's
it's been a lot of work. It's not happened on accident. I will also say that that there have been times that have been sticky and have been hard, and where there has been yelling. So don't hear that this has been a perfect picture. The three of us, when we sit down, hasn't always been like, here's a beer, cheers, let's have dinner.
Right.
For the most part, it is now, but that hasn't always been the case. It has definitely been deliberate. And my mantra, whenever I just couldn't even stand their dad, was he loves he loves his kids. He loves his kids. He loves his kids, right? Bring it back to what matters, which is them.
Right. Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. The other thing you do too, you're big in their gymnastics as well, right? They're into that. Let's talk a little bit about that. And let's talk a little bit about like the importance of being a part of what they're a part of.
Yeah. So I was a gymnast for 15 years growing up, and was like, lived it, breathed it, ate the chalk, like that's what I was all about. And so I was actually nervous about having them be in gymnastics, because you hear of these parents who live their dreams vicariously through their children. And there were certainly dreams of mine that didn't come to fruition. I did make a Division I college gymnastics team, which was the dream, but then transferred to be with their dad. So that all worked out, and I'm glad that I did that, but it also meant that I transferred to a school where I got an injury, had to quit, yada, yada. So there was some unfinished business in my gymnastics career. And so I didn't want to be that mom who then lived vicariously through her kids. But as fate would have it, at age 2, Avery's doing flips and forward rolls and this. I'm like, oh no, it's in her blood. Right. And her sister, basically came out of the womb doing the same thing. So I was like, all right, well, I guess we're doing this thing. But I've always been really deliberate about, this is your dream. What are your dreams? How far do you want to go?
Right.
I'll support you. I'll encourage you. I will do the massive hours of driving every week. But I'm not going to do this for you, and I'm not going to drag you there. And so, we now are at a gym that's about 30 minutes drive away from our house. Avery goes to gymnastics 5 days a week.
Wow.
Annika goes to gymnastics 4 days a week. And of course, their schedules do not align.
No, why would they?
So every weekday, I am driving to the gym twice, except for Thursdays, is the one day that Annika doesn't go, that Avery does. But
Right.
Avery starts at 1:30. Annika doesn't start till 4. So it's back and forth and back and forth. So largely, I am in my car from 1 o'clock until 4:30. And I've learned how to, turn on my hotspot on my phone and work on my laptop in my car while I'm waiting here and there.
Sure.
But it's been amazing to see them flourish and just have that success and also the failure. And I love that about sports, is that I think it teaches children to fail with grace and to get back up again.
Right.
And I think it teaches them, with the right coaching, to also win with grace.
Right.
And humility, and to be proud of their accomplishments, but not to, flaunt them. And gymnastics especially, and I'm of course biased towards gymnastics, but I think more than any other sport, it reflects real life, because it is an individual sport in that when they're up on that beam, the judges are looking at them, right? But it's also a team sport. So, your score and how you show up that day matters to the team. And that's how real life is, right? Like your behavior and your accomplishments matter, but you're also a part of a team, and don't forget that. So I love gymnastics for both of those aspects, the individual and the team aspect of it.
No, that's great. That's great. It just reminds me of John Wooden's line, right, where I think he learned it from his dad, where it's like, hey, you shouldn't be able to tell whether or not you won or lost by the way you walk off the field, right? So doing it gracefully. So just pretty much get out there and do your best no matter what. And if you lost, then work on it. If you won, great job, work on it.
That's right. That's right. And in both situations, walk off, with pride, and not the arrogance kind of pride, right? But just with pride about bringing your all. Did you bring your all that day?
Exactly.
And if you did, you can be proud of yourself for that.
Absolutely. Now, we talked a little bit about your faith. What about it that having a strong faith doesn't necessarily mean being religious to you? What does that mean?
Yeah. So I have taken a sort of a step back, and I really had to research faith. And so that was part of my process as I became an adult, was to research all of them. Research Buddhism, research Islam, research, Hinduism, just research it. Like, what are they about? And for me, my belief of God, the power, who, however you want to name him, she, it, is that God is so big. And what we've done with religion, for better or for worse, is we've kind of put God into a box, right? So that our little brains can understand. So most of us call God he. Why? Well, we live in a patriarchal society, right? That makes sense to us. And we don't have a term that is, it doesn't seem appropriate, right, to call God it. But like so that's how I have internalized my faith. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that there is this amazing, loving, higher power that created us. I don't think we happened on accident.
Where did you land?
So I say, this is how I say I have a very deep faith with Christian leanings.
Okay. Oh, no.
And for me, it was needing to see the proof historically that Jesus Christ walked the earth. And my belief is that either he was legitimately insane, or the best con artist ever, or he was the Son of God. Because of the things that he said, not just in the Bible. And I wanted to, kind of see proof outside of the Bible, because I think that people can jimmy that stuff. But historically, what did he say? What is in other works of history? And so that's kind of how I lean. But I also think that God is so big that he looks directly, at your heart, to go, where is your heart? Like, I'm going to get beyond your brain, which we all know, if we've done any mindset work, that our brains can get in our way. He can look right into our core and go, where is your heart?
Right.
And in that respect, I don't know that he gets stuck on if you were born into a Christian family and so therefore you learned about Jesus, or you were born into a Muslim family and you learned about Muhammad. Like, I don't think that he's that small-minded.
Right.
So
One would hope not, right? One would hope not.
I
Do
would
you,
hope not, right?
what so do you go to church on Sundays with your daughters and Joel? Everybody, the family goes to church, or do you kind of do like an in-home thing?
We don't. We talk a lot about faith,
Okay.
but we don't go to church. And I believe there's a lot of value in the community of church,
Hmm.
but we haven't found a church that resonates with both myself and my husband. My husband likes the traditional Lutheran, service,
Sure. Right.
45 minutes in and out, and you sing all the same hymns, and it's like they're very stable, right? Which is part of my husband's strengths. And I like the contemporary, live band sorts of things. And so we just haven't found that perfect balance. And so we don't. But I wish we could, because I love the community aspect
Right.
of what church can bring, but I also think it can be one of the fakest places on earth.
It's a real hit and miss, right? Real hit and
Yeah.
miss.
Yeah. And I'm probably saying lots of things that are either resonating or really turning people off right now as they're listening.
It's
But
a
I
50 shot, no matter
hear
what.
my heart, people, hear my heart.
Listen, no, you're fine. You're in good company. You're fine. You're fine. And then the other part here, let's just talk about learning and continuous learning and apply it in the, especially from a parenting aspect.
Yeah. Well, for one, I think continuous learning is vital to anybody, any human. If you're not learning, then you're dying. If you're not growing, you're dying, kind of thing. That being said, I like to learn experientially. That's important to me. So I do read a lot of books, and I do philosophize a lot with my kids. I actually have them listen to audiobooks sometimes with me, and sometimes they're high level, very intellectual kind of books, and they kind of roll their eyes, and you're like,
Do,
really, are you making us listen to this?
do you do it when they're in the car? Because I know I do. Like they can't go anywhere. It's 60 miles an hour plus, and I just press play.
Yeah. So oftentimes we do, and like I said, there's so much time in the car that we spend on the way to gymnastics and such.
Hmm.
But one thing I love about that car time is the ability to connect and talk.
Sure.
So there are times when they're just like, "Mom, I'm tired. I don't want to talk right now." It's like, cool, and then I'll pop on an audiobook. Or and sometimes that's even too much. Like, I just don't want to think, and this book is making me think.
Right.
And so we either keep it quiet or we'll just turn on some music. But I love that car time with them
Hmm.
to talk. And
Right.
so what do you think? I had this experience with dad today, and I'm mad at dad. And it's like, well, what strengths do you think he's bringing forward? And so
Right.
we talk a lot about perspective. And well, this boy at school did this thing, and he's such a jerk. And today it was this boy kept putting the lip of his desk on top of the lip of my daughter's desk, and so it was just really distracting. And she just kept pushing the desk off. And I don't know if you can picture that or not, but like literally, like he put his desk on top of her desk, and she's like, leave me alone. I'm like, he likes you, right? Like,
Right.
he's trying
Right.
to flirt. And I know. I'm like, okay, so what can he be thinking? She goes, I just think I need to have a conversation with a teacher. And I said, yep, I think you should.
Right.
So it's just, what do we do? Real life stuff is what
Right.
we often talk about. But one of the coolest things, bringing it back to faith, is my daughter asked me about basically predestination.
Hmm.
And she said, well, so Mom, you don't believe everything happens for a reason. I said, no, I don't. And she goes, but do you think God knows what's going to happen? And I said, I think he does. And she's like, well, okay, well, how is that? How are both of those things possible? And amazing to have that thought come out of an 11-year-old, right?
Right.
And I'm like, well, I think that at any juncture, God knows we could take this path or this path. And then from there, we could take this path or this path. And so, picture like this massive tree. And so she's kind of looking up and she's getting this picture of this massive tree. And I said, and somewhere in there is our path. And
Right.
he knows all of the things. And she's like, whoa. And I said, here's the thing is that I think people, when they think about predestination, think, well, if God knows what's going to happen, then he must know exactly what's going to happen. But I think he knows all of the things. And so we have conversations like that, which just kind of expand specifically my older daughter gets into these conversations more than my younger daughter, but expands their definition and their understanding of God and of just how big. And so this is the question that I encourage them to ask at every point. Just say, okay, wow, how big are you, God?
Right.
And I think if they can continue to ask that question, we can continue to open to the possibility of, how big are you? Let's talk about the law of attraction. Let's talk about, what this means for, something rotten that happens in the world. Like, did God mean for that to happen? Well, I don't really think so. How else can we think about this?
Right.
So I'm kind of rambling, but I
No,
clearly I'm passionate about this whole expansive God thing.
Well, it's okay. It's okay. I don't even want to stop you. I'm just like curious to see where it goes. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure, but
right.
I'm in. So the obsession with learning and growing though, right? So where do you feel like that kind of took hold, or has that been something that's always been a part of you?
I think it's actually a part of me that was born in, that's hardwired for me, because my question is always why.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I always want to understand, why is the rule there? Why does this work this way? Why is this person this way? Why is this? Why?
Right.
And I think that's such a healthy question. Now, it can also turn into judgment, right? When you're like, why'd you do that? Right.
Sure.
And very often coaches and counselors are taught to not ask why, because it shows people that you're judging them.
Okay.
But when you're asking why from a place of curiosity, now it's a different conversation, right?
Sure.
Which brings us all back to that curiosity thing.
Yeah.
So that's my question. That's what drives my learning, is wondering why.
I think you mentioned, I want to say it was you who mentioned in one of the conversations on the podcast that, if you, in the strengths part, right?
Mm-hmm.
If like you're sitting there and a lot of people get frustrated because they can't figure out like their why or whatever, and they can't figure out their strengths. I think you'd mentioned to say, just follow your curiosity.
Yeah, that actually, I borrowed that. I won't say I stole it. I borrowed it from Liz Gilbert, who wrote the book Big Magic.
Okay.
And she was all about following passion, and she would speak on this from the stage. And she had a woman write her a note, or write her a letter, and say, I came to be inspired by you, and I left depressed. And the reason is that you told me to follow my passion, and I don't have one. And so now Liz makes a specific distinction and says, if you don't have a driving passion, follow curiosity. I wonder about this. I'm going to go check this out.
Right.
I'm going to wonder. And you'll find your passion when you lead with curiosity. And so when I read that in that book, I was like, boom, that's so it. That's so smart, because people beat themselves up because they don't have a driving passion. That's something that they just are about.
Right.
Now, passion comes very easily for me, so it's not one of my issues, however.
Well, there's that too, though, right? So, I think that yours is activator, right? Like one of your tops is like activator.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my second one's that way. So I think it's easy to be curious and passionate about something kind of quickly. It comes easily. I feel, right? Whether or not we should chase it all, though, I think you'd also mention, right? Like to take that deep breath and say, hold on, I'm going to count to like 400 and make sure that.
Yeah. And that's, and when you need to take that breath, engage someone who has deliberative to say, hey, will you be my sounding board? Like, what things am I missing here?
Right.
What else do I need to think out and write out and brainstorm out before I actually take action here? Someone with deliberative every time will be able to help you.
Cool, buddy. Go tell her I said hi. I'll be down in a couple minutes. All right.
Got it.
All right.
That's awesome.
Where my fidget spinner is?
Not offhand. The counter down there.
The counter. Real life parenting.
There it is. It's on the fly.
I love it.
You brought up, what was the name of that book you just mentioned?
Big Magic by Liz Gilbert. So Liz Gilbert was the same author that wrote Eat, Pray, Love.
Okay.
And that is what exploded her as an author. But she'd been writing for 30 years before that. Who knows? I can't remember how many books she wrote before Eat, Pray, Love that weren't successful. Right.
Yeah.
And so people see this success and it's like, okay, an overnight success, 10 or 15, 20 years in the making.
Now look, it took you 3 years to become an icon. I'm pretty
I
proud.
know, right?
That's
It's
like
a long time.
um, what are some other books? You just met one of the other ones that I actually just read this. And I'm drawing a blank. Other books that you recommend or just absolutely love. The Alchemist is one
The
that I
Alchemist
just
is
read
one. I love it.
first
I
time.
love it because it talks about the journey and being okay with what are you learning in this moment, in this
Yeah,
space,
yeah.
that will bring you back to your goal, your treasure. So I love The Alchemist. I love books on habit because I think it's fascinating
Okay,
to understand how the brain works.
sure.
So there's a Charles Duhigg book called The Power of Habit. I'm going to screw this one up now. They're all locked in my Audible here. So The Power of Habit is a good one. Carol Dweck writes one about mindset.
That's it. Look,
Um,
that one changed my life, I think.
that one is excellent. I do love The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. Um, I certainly don't have a perfect miracle morning, but it's so right on. It's such a simple, it's refreshing to have something that's simple,
Right.
right? Um, Sleep Smarter by Sean Stevenson. That one is the one that gave me permission to sleep at night.
How many hours? How many hours of sleep do you get?
I get 7.5 hours of sleep, unless there's something crazy that happens. But I really try to get 7.5 at least.
Gotcha. It's impressive.
Mhm.
I want more. I try. I
Yeah,
put effort into it, and I barely get over 7 most of the times.
yeah, yeah.
Um, two things. One, how many times have you done the John Lee Dumas mastery things?
So I did a one-day workshop with John back before I started my podcast,
Right.
and so that was one day, and it actually turned out to be more with him and Michael O'Neill out in LA, and that was amazing. And John and Kate and I have become friends. At first, email friends. They actually answer their own emails. So if you're ever interested in contacting them, they will actually contact you back. And they just invited me this last podcast movement just a few weeks ago to be on in a workshop with them. And they first looked at people who were in their community, the Paradise Podcasters Paradise, excuse me, which was like 2,500 podcasters, and they chose me to be one of five
Nice.
on that panel. And so what an honor to be in that space. And they're just really good humans. I mean,
Right.
really, really good humans. Both John and Kate are. So that's kind of how my relationship with John and Kate has evolved over time. But it has been, again, deliberate. Like, if you want to meet these people, go to where they are,
Right. 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 Right.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Go to conferences, invest in workshops like I did. Do the things to get in the space of people that you want to emulate,
Right.
not as a fangirl or a fan guy, but
Right.
as somebody who's like, you're doing things the way that I want to do them. Help me learn from you.
Right.
And suddenly now you're a peer. Right now I'm not making the money that John and Kate are making. There's very few people that are. However, I do legitimately feel like they're peer
Right.
now.
Right.
And that happened in a matter of 18 or 20 months.
Right.
So it is possible, but you have to do the work.
Right. Now that makes sense. But there was not, you did like his mastery journal, right? The
Oh
100-day
yeah.
mastery journal. And is that how you wrote your book?
Yes, actually, that is how I wrote my book. So I took his 100-day challenge, right? The Freedom Journal is all about reaching your one goal, your biggest goal in 100 days. And that's how I wrote my book. And I'm glad I had that because it kept me focused on the one thing, right? So there's that book by J. Abraham and Gary Keller, The One Thing.
Right.
And it really is like, what is your one thing? And it keeps you focused, and it's a daily journal. So the Freedom Journal is awesome. Yep, that's another good one.
So to name your book again.
From Frustrated to Freaking Awesome.
Freaking awesome. And that's out now. Yes.
Yes, it is. And so you can get it on Amazon. And actually, I would love to give your audience a PDF version of that book. PDF isn't as easy to read as on Kindle or otherwise. You can certainly go buy it on Amazon and Kindle. That would be great. I would love the royalties. That's fabulous. But you can kind of get a flavor for what's in the book by getting the PDF version. So, we can maybe I can create a link for just your audience, daretasucceed.com/let's go fatherhood.
Fair
How about
enough.
that?
Awesome. Hey, thank you for that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know you're short on time. So real quick there, one of the questions I always like to ask is, your children write you a letter 10 years from now. What would you like that letter to say, and why?
I would like them to say, thank you for letting me be me. And thank you for empowering me to live out who I am without putting barriers on that. And also thank you for helping me to think bigger and to play bigger and to really truly be kind. That's
I love it.
like that. If I can impart compassion and dreaming big and then taking action on those big dreams, that would be enough to make me cry in reading that letter 10 years from now.
Awesome. I'll make sure they get this one so they can write you that letter. Where can everybody reach you?
So they can go to daretasucceed.com. And if you want the book, which I encourage you to do, daretasucceed.com/fatherhood. That's DAIRE, 2, succeed.com. And there's a contact form there. Otherwise, you can shoot me an email, but it's really just easiest to go to the website because there's the contact and there's all the things, and they can look at my podcast there and, all of those things. So daretasucceed.com and /fatherhood.
Awesome. Alissa, thanks for being on tonight.
Thank you. It was such an honor to be here.